After a long and extremely competitive NBA playoffs, the finals matchup is now set. The Oklahoma City Thunder and the Indiana Pacers are the last two standing in a series almost no one would have called before the playoffs started. And disregarding the casuals who care about the NBA's ratings for some reason, calling this a bad finals and would have preferred the Lakers or something, most fans of good basketball understand that this is a series that should be incredibly fun to watch. However, the consensus on the result of this series could not be more one-sided. The vast majority of takes online, probably in excess of 90%, are claiming that this is a Thunder blowout waiting to happen. Many are completely disregarding the Indiana Pacers, calling for a 4-5 game walk-in-the-park series win for the Thunder. Today, I'm going to establish why those fans are completely wrong, and this series has a chance to shock everyone in the way that it plays out. I'm going to touch on everything I consider to be an X factor in this series, and some major points that people are discounting that should make this series much closer than anyone seems to be expecting. So, with that, let's get into it. So, first things first, taking just a surface level look at these teams, it's easy to see why someone who didn't watch a ton of these teams throughout the year statistically would just say the Thunder are winning and not look much further into it. The Thunder are 68-14 and have been from beginning to the end of this season the best overall team in the league. Their defense is stifling and they love to turn opposing teams over. Their defense has generally been the reason for their consistency, as defense travels way better than offense does typically, while teams more often than not perform better on offense at home. This is why the Thunder have relatively similar records away from home as they do on their home floor, but typically have a stronger point differential at home. The Pacers, being a primarily offensive-based team, have a much stronger home record than they do away, because again, defense travels better than offense. Offense has more major swings, depending on if you're home or away, as far as historical patterns go. The Pacers are almost a 500 team away from home this year, but they're 29-12 at home. These are the surface level win-loss stats, but when you begin to look at more detailed trends, you see the teams are a lot closer than that. Let's look at context. The Pacers begun this year heavily injured and experimented with a lot of rotations, not too much success. They started the season 10-15 before Nembhard came back from an early injury, and they had no Nesmith for months. It wasn't until the new year that they had their current roster at full health, and since January 1st, they have been elite. Since January 1st, including the playoffs, the Pacers have the second best record in the NBA at 46-18, behind only, you guessed it, the Thunder at 53-13. A difference, but not as substantial as the surface level win-loss record would indicate. The Pacers are, by this metric, the second best team in the NBA in the 2025 calendar year, and deservedly are in the NBA Finals. Since the playoffs started, the Pacers have had a net offensive rating higher than the Thunder, while the Thunder's defensive rating has been significantly better than the Pacers. Both teams have depth, and both teams like to run. The individual players are what a lot of the series is going to ride on. The Thunder clearly have the best player in the series in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Regardless of if he should have won the MVP or not, there is no question he was at least a top 2 player in the league this year and creates significant problems for any team to deal with on the offensive end. He's an absolute offensive force with elite ISO ability and 3-level scoring. And then you have the do-it-all secondary star in Jalen Williams, who does just about everything you need and is an above-average player at just about everything. And then you have the paint presence in Chet Holmgren. Add on all the role players like Hartenstein, Caruso, Dort, Wiggins, Isaiah Joe, and Cason Wallace. They're a legit, extremely deep team with multiple guys that can play lockdown D and hit shots from the outside. The perfectly constructed team to run a positionless, drive-and-kick style offense. What really interests me the most is the fact that Indy is actually more similar to them than many realize. Their main difference is their star. Tyrese Halliburton is significantly different than Shai in the way that he plays. He's a more pure distributor that can score and is overall a worse defender than Shai as well, while Shai is obviously score first and can distribute when he needs to. The Pacers also have Siakam, who, while he does it in a different way, is also a good at most things, bad at really nothing player like Jalen Williams. They have the modern stretch big in Turner, who is a little more traditional than Chet as he's a bit stronger, not quite as tall, but he's got less ball skills. He still likes to hover around the 3-point line, but overall, pretty similar players when you really look at it. And then they've got the 2 defensive-minded 3-and-D players in the starting lineup in Nesmith and Nembhard. Both starting lineups are constructed much with the same mentality in mind, which I find really quite interesting. I do think that while the Pacers bench is quite deep with guys like Mathurin, McConnell, Toppin, and Shepherd, overall they don't quite reach the level of ability OKC has shown, they're closer than people like to admit as far as bench depth. If there was any team that had a comparable depth level to the Thunder, it's probably the Pacers. The most crucial matchup in my eyes is who do the Pacers put on Shai? That make or breaks the series for Indiana. To me, the conclusion is you put Nembhard on him at least to start. The size of Nesmith makes sense, and that gave Brunson trouble in the last series, but I like the Nesmith matchup on Jalen Williams much more than I like the Nembhard matchup on Jalen Williams, so that's how I would start. Nembhard showed that he was up for the task against Brunson, but the difference obviously is the length and the size of Shai. That matchup, and also the Nesmith matchup, is what makes this series to me. If Nembhard and Nesmith don't step up in their respective matchups, Williams and Shai will have their way with them, and the series will be over before it begins. In fact, if either of them struggle to guard their matchup, it's likely to be a rough series for Indiana. But the pattern of previous series shows both Nesmith and Nembhard have what it takes to be above average defenders. If they can do anything to bring Shai and Williams down just a little bit, you could end up seeing quite the competitive series. Looking at the opposite end, how will Halliburton deal with what I assume will be a matchup with Lu Dort? Dort seems like the obvious conclusion on who will be matched up with Hallie, as he's a great physical defender. Tyrese can have success against any type of player, but if there was ever a defender that bothered him as a strong, athletic, big guard, Dort is basically the pinnacle of that type of defender in the NBA today. If Tyrese can't play through that challenge again, could be a long series for Indiana. If he can meet that challenge and find success, Indiana could be right there with OKC when it's all said and done. In conclusion, this series should absolutely be a lot closer than the vast majority of people are giving it credit for. The delusion seems to come from fans who just haven't watched a lot of Pacers basketball. The same fans who said Bucks in 6, then Cavs in 5, then Knicks in 6, are now saying Thunder in 4. When does the conversation finally go away from the whole Giannis had no help, to Cavs are frauds, to Tibbs doesn't know how to coach and needs fired, which, by the way, actually just happened, narrative, to the more straightforward conclusion that these teams were actually pretty good, but the Pacers were just better. The Pacers are a great basketball team. So are the Thunder, but the Thunder are rightfully getting their respect where the Pacers are not. That probably has a lot to do with the consistency of the Thunder throughout the season, ending the year with the best record. But the Thunder ran through the West to get here and faced resistance from only one legitimate Nuggets team. The Pacers ran through the East and faced only minor resistance from the Knicks. And again, the Knicks were not ever a bad team. They beat the Celtics pretty much straight up. Yes, Tatum got hurt, but they were leading the Celtics before Tatum got hurt. The Knicks are a good basketball team. The Pacers were just better. And to me, this is clearly the correct NBA Finals matchup. There is no fraud run. This is no surprise. As I covered earlier, the Pacers have been, by most statistical metrics, the second best team in the NBA since 2025 began. The Thunder have been first. Everything I have detailed in this video leads me to the conclusion the most likely outcome to this series is a close 6 to 7 game series that could legitimately go either way. I think if I were to pick the most likely outcome, I would probably take this as Thunder in 7. Ultimately, they have slightly more top-end talent and a better defense, while the Pacers are matched on depth. Well, they haven't been matched on depth for the entirety of this playoffs. That's one advantage they had over those previous teams, but the second most likely outcome to me is Pacers in 6. I think this absolutely could happen. The Pacers have the playoff experience and the vet leaders that the Thunder do not. The Thunder have talent, but have never been even to a conference finals with this core before this year. The Pacers have been to a conference finals last year with this same core. And that experience showed throughout this year's playoffs, performing in crunch time again and again. They're tested, clutch, and are good at holding up against the things OKC likes to take advantage of, such as turnovers. The Pacers are one of the best teams in avoiding turnovers. Pacers are a great team, as are the Thunder, and I can't wait to see this series between the two best teams in basketball who both want this championship tremendously. And with that, we wrap up today's video. Thanks to all of you for watching and supporting this channel. If you found this video enjoyable or informative, I encourage you to give it a like and consider subscribing to the channel. I mostly do draft-related content, but from time to time, I'll make a video on something I feel necessary to comment on, and this is one of those things. But anyways, thanks again for watching, and hope you enjoy. Hey, thanks again for watching this video. If you enjoyed what you just saw, click on one of these videos here to see more.